Yo, what's going on, everybody? It is StraitOuttaBoston here, aka the King of Boston. Today we're back for the third edition of the 2014 MLB Season Preview Podcast. Today we're going to be covering the National League East, and first and foremost, I am joined by Ryan. Ryan, how's it going?
Pretty good, Ian. So today we got the NL East, and this was really a dismal offseason by most of these teams. Pretty much this NL East is just a two-team race this year, the Braves and the Nationals. But we're going to be starting off with the cellar dweller Miami Marlins last year, who finished 62-100, which was good for last place in the NL East. So they had a little decent offseason. They signed Jared Saltalamacchia from the Red Sox for 3 years, $21 million, and we'll get back to that in a little bit. Obviously, they took them from Ian's team, but he had 273 last year with 14 home runs. But he also struck out. Also nearly struck out 30% of the time. They also signed Rafael Furcal for their second base job. Signed Garrett Jones for 2 years, $8 million. Traded Logan Morrison to Seattle for Carter Capps, who is a reliever with a very high ERA. and and they traded Justin Ruggiano to the Cubs for Brian Bogosevic, who hit 273 last year in 155 plate appearances. However, he's a career 236 hitter. So I really doubt that will continue. So, Ian, what do you think about this offseason?
I actually, I liked what the Marlins did this offseason. The Jared Saltalamacchia signing, I wasn't the biggest fan of, because I've seen Saltalamacchia play firsthand in the past. He's not a consistent player. He had an 804 OPS last year. His career high before that was only 742. I guess it was 745, but that was in 2007, way back when. And other than that, he had a 742 in 2012 with the Red Sox. He's a durable guy. He's worked up his kind of endurance and ability to pace himself throughout the long season catching, more so over these last couple years of his career. And, he'll probably be more productive than whoever else the Marlins had. I mean, Rob Brantley or Miguel Olivo, whoever else they had there back last year. And only $7 million a year, even if he does kind of flop and becomes what he was in 2012 and 2011. That's not the worst contract in the world, at least. So, it's not like they signed him for 4 years and $50 million or something like that. I mean, it's a manageable contract, so it's not the worst contract in the world, even if it does flop. But he's a productive player when he's on, and I guess the Marlins are going to bank on him playing more like he did in 2013 than in 2012. As for the rest of their offseason moves, Furcal is a good low-risk, high-reward type of signing. I liked the Garrett Jones signing. I talked about the last podcast. I like Garrett Jones a little bit in certain situations. I think he could be a good platoon player.
You love those platoons.
I do love those platoons. Logan Morrison, they traded him away for Carter Capps. Morrison, is a former top prospect who's flopped a little bit ever since coming up. He's now 26 years old. He ended up with the 709 OPS for them last year, only slugged 375. Pretty much being him a big disappointment, so I don't mind them trading away for basically nothing. It's almost more of just symbolism of moving on from that player at that spot and just moving on to whoever the next first baseman is in that sense. They traded Ruggiano for Bogosevic. I actually had no idea Bogosevic was so productive last year. And I know he's for his career, he's not that good, so who knows? I mean, a lot of scouts always talk about this leap that hitters take sometimes in between their 700 and 1000th at bat, somewhere around there in that range. They take hitters sometimes take big leaps, and maybe Bogosevic is just going to hit that because he has 773 career plate appearances at this point. So maybe he's just hitting that now, but I would kind of doubt it. I mean, it's a guy that I never heard nothing about. And I wouldn't expect for him to keep up his pace, but it could work out. I mean, it's kind of a nothing trade to me. I mean, it's hard for me to tell how that trade is going to work out. That's why I call it a nothing trade. But I like this Marlins team. I like some of their young talent, and that's why I like them a little bit more going into this year than I did last year. I thought they got good production to guys like Marcell Ozuna and Christian Yelich coming up last year, and then you add that to the Saltalamacchia upgrade over whatever, Jeff Mathis, Rob Brantley, whoever, that crap that they had a catcher last year, for lack of a better term. They also obviously have Jose Fernandez as a young stud.
I was about to say that. How excited are you to watch this kid pitch this year?
I know. He's fun to watch. I didn't get to watch a lot of him last year because the Marlins are rarely on any national games or any MLB Network games or anything like that. But he's an exciting player to watch. And they also have some other good young pitchers like Jacob Turner, Nathan Eovaldi, and Henderson Alvarez. All three of those guys had pretty productive years in limited time. None of them had more than 20 starts. Alvarez with the least at 17, Eovaldi at 18, and Turner at 20. But they looked,
Alvarez did a no-hitter at the end of the season, right?
yeah, in the last day of the year, I believe.
Versus the Tigers.
Yep. Against their B team. So, those are three young pitchers that have produced in the past, and I just like some of the young talent on this team. They don't have one of the strongest farm systems in baseball, but I think they're headed in the right direction, and they didn't do much in the offseason, but I think that was kind of the right way to approach it. This is an offseason for a team like this. They should not be going out and signing Shin-Soo or anything like that. So I kind of liked what they did, and I like this team moving forward, but Ryan, what do you think?
I think ever since they got rid of Jose Reyes and they traded away, Hanley. I almost forgot his name. When they traded those two guys, I think they started to kind of move in a good direction. I think that they thought that they could buy their way back in the postseason, and they quickly found out that they couldn't. So I think after that, they're really going to be looking towards the future, obviously. They do have some good young pieces, and it's going to be interesting as to whether or not they can keep Giancarlo.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up, but keep going.
I know they were trying to sign him to an extension, but I mean, if I were him, I definitely would not want to be committing, more than 2 years of my career to this team. To be quite honest, I'd want to have to stick around a little bit and see where they're going. But also, quick note, I'm looking at this. Steve Cishek, he had 34 saves last year and 36 save opportunities with a 2.33 ERA. So I was kind of surprised by that, actually. But what were you going to say about Giancarlo?
So I remember bringing this up on the podcast last year, and I'll just bring up the question once again. Do you think that the Marlins should trade Giancarlo Stanton?
Well, do you know what his contract is? How many years is on it?
So he is arbitration. I just looked this up too, because I knew this question was going to pop up. He's currently arbitration eligible. He will be a free agent after the 2017 season.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't see why you would want to trade him right now. I mean, obviously last year I think we both agreed that they should trade him. I'm pretty sure, but I'm pretty sure I did. I don't know about you. But, I mean, for right now, I mean, unless they can get a giant package like with the Mariners, they can get Taijuan Walker and some of those kids, Nick Franklin possibly. But I think that they would be demanding a giant package, and unless they got it, I would say hang on to them until at least maybe 2015, 2016 and see where things go. Unless you get that giant offer.
Yeah, and last year I actually, I'm going to say what I said last year, and that's, I think it's not time yet. I think they still have some time to what am I trying to say? They still have time to kind of rebuild a little bit, get the team going in the right direction before they have to make a decision on a guy like this. Also, he's coming off of definitely a down year considering what he did in 2012 and 2013. Yes, and he's been injured the last couple of years. But his power was down. His OPS was down over 100 points. So I think, even though I'm sure teams are still willing to throw Godfather offers at the Marlins for this guy, I think you'd be selling low at this point. So I think that they should hold on to him, maybe readdress it next offseason as the exact same thing I said last year. And I think it's one of those situations that they have time to manage this in the future. They don't have to worry about it right now, even if he's going to be disgruntled for a couple years playing on a bad team. And I don't blame him, but there's just no rush to do some sort of move like that, unless, like you said, they get some crazy offer from a team with a really strong farm system like the Red Sox or the Mariners or the Cardinals or something like that. But if an offer like that does not present itself, then I would not trade this guy.
Just a quick note: in 45 at bats, he has 4 home runs, 12 RBIs, and a 3.11 average this spring.
Yep, he's been doing pretty well. So do you want to move on to the offseason grades?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
All right, so I'll go first. I gave them a B. Like I said, I kind of like where this team's going. I don't, it's not one of the teams that I think is going to be, a top-tier team in a year or two, but I think it's a team going in the right direction. They know what they're doing. They have some good young pieces, young talent. And in their offseason, they stayed put. They did exactly what they should have done, and that was pretty much just stay on track. But what do you think?
My offseason grade, I've given them a C+. I think it was actually a pretty solid offseason, but nothing really special, obviously. I think getting Saltalamacchia really brought it up, obviously, and that's going to be a nice catching upgrade for them. And I think, from what I've read, their plan is to try and see what they can get out of Saltalamacchia by the deadline this season and see if they can get rid of him for some type of talent in return. But that's a C+ for them for this offseason.
All right, and we'll move on to the over-under. The over-under on this team is 70. To put that in perspective, they won 62 last year. I'm going to take the over. It might be a stretch to say they're going to be 9 wins better this year. But I just like the young talent on this team. I think when you get some of that young talent up, I like how Christian Yelich played at the end of last year. If he plays a full season this year, if Ozuna plays a full season this year, And if some of their young pitchers can stay healthy, I think you're going to get a 70-win ball club out of these guys.
That, I agree with you say right there with the young guys, and hopefully they can, really improve this year. And I think that's what this team's going to be all about. But I'm definitely taking the under. I don't see more than a 9-win improvement from this team. They really didn't sign anyone to really help them. So I definitely would take the under on 70. So,
all right. So
let's move on.
I'll move on to the Philadelphia Phillies, the fourth place team in the NL East.
I forgot that you were going.
Yeah. Fourth place last year, 73 and 89. And pretty much, I don't know if I'd call them the laughing stock of the league at this point, but the way they're run and you look at that roster and it's pretty bad. Well, I'll go over their offseason. They got AJ Burnett on a 1-year, $16 million deal. They also signed Roberto Hernandez, formerly known as Fausto Carmona. Hernandez had a pretty bad year with the Rays last year, a 4.89 ERA. He did have a healthy ground ball rate, though, at 53.2% in 151 innings. Roy Halladay retired. He was pretty much a nothing for them last year, was hurt most of the year, and had not been the same player that he once was. And they're also, this isn't really in a transaction, but Cole Hamels is having some injury concerns about him right now. I think it's with his arm or his elbow or something like that. That's never a good thing for a pitcher, especially at the beginning of spring training. So that's going to be something that they have to evaluate or keep track of. Not evaluate, but just kind of keep. You have to. What am I trying to say? It's something. It's definitely cause. Yeah, well, it's definitely a cause for concern, and it's something that you have to take into account when you try to project this team for this season. But Ryan, what do you have to say about the Phillies?
Oh my God. I mean, I really don't see where Ruben Amaro is trying to take this team. He's trying to be like the Yankees. I mean, AJ Burnett signing for 1 year, $60 million. That's really not that bad of a deal because it's only for 1 year and whatever. And it really does help bolster this rotation a little bit. Obviously, having some concerns. You got Cliff Lee at the top, but then you got Cole Hamels, who's most likely going to be missing most of April. So then you'll have AJ Burnett, your 2 spot. Then you have Kendrick, and then you have Fausto Carmona, Roberto Hernandez. And then number 5 is still up in the air. I was kind of interested, if you remember last season, Miguel Alfredo Gonzalez, when they signed him for I think it was $50 million. I forget how many years. But he was a really highly touted guy, and I guess this. Well, first of all, it's very unclear on how well he's going to do because he's been having some really terrible control issues. I guess he's really pretty bad, and also he's going to be starting off the season on the DL. So really, I mean, that's just another bad signing by the Phillies right there. And I really think that they should honestly attempt to try to blow up this team. And they can definitely do it. I mean, Ben Revere, Dominic Brown. Well, I think Dominic Brown should definitely stay on this team. They should build around him because he's a young kid. He still got some room to grow. He had a pretty decent season last year. But if you can get something out of Ryan Howard and Chase Utley and Cliff Lee, why not? Why wouldn't you do that? Try to build for this future because what you've been doing right now is just been awful. Jonathan Papelbon, they've been looking to trade him, I believe, but I don't think anyone really wants Jonathan Papelbon on their team. So I really just don't understand what they're trying to do, to be quite honest. So I don't know. What do you think?
I definitely agree. I think you got to blow up this group. It was so confusing when you kept hearing those trade rumors about Dominic Brown for Jose Bautista or Dominic Brown for, veteran player X, and it was like, what are you doing? I mean, you have this young group that has just deteriorated over the last, or not this young group, this old group of players that has just deteriorated over the past 4 years. And they're not going to get any better because, their core, guys like Ryan Howard, Chase Utley, Cole Hamels, all those guys are in their mid to late 30s, and that those guys, they don't get better at that age. They only get worse, which should go without saying. So I didn't mind the AJ Burnett signing. I mean, 1 year deal for a guy that's had a 3-4-1 or 4-2 over the last 2 years on a 1 year contract. I mean, that's fine. They have money to spend, so giving a guy a big 1 year contract like that is not a big deal. It's a fair signing. I didn't mind them re-signing Carlos Ruiz. He had kind of a down year last year, but he's been pretty productive in the past. Maybe, I mean, they have a couple nice young players like Cody Ash and Dominic Brown, but other than that, it's not a good farm system. And if you can get a good deal for a guy like Cliff Lee or Chase Utley, like you mentioned, or Ryan Howard or whoever, I mean, probably not Ryan Howard, but whoever on this team, any veteran like that, if you can get a good deal for him, you got to blow it up if you're this team. I think they also signed Marlon Byrd too, didn't they? They got him for 2 years.
Right. Yeah, right fielder thing. I don't know if I put that in there or not.
Yeah. But yeah, go ahead if you have any other
Yeah,
thoughts.
this team has just looked awful this spring training. I know that for a fact. And I don't think they have many guys even hitting over 300. I'm looking over here, and the only guy I can really see is Ben Revere, who's hitting 354. Marlon Bird's in 302, but besides that, I mean, Howard's hitting 240. It's awful. He has 20 strikeouts and 50 at bats too.
Mm.
Oh my God. So yeah, I mean, I think it's time to get rid of this team. See what if you can get anything from Howard. I mean, I think he's like what 33, 34. And obviously some injury concerns with that Achilles heel that he tore. Was that two seasons ago?
I think I don't know if he tore it. I thought he ruptured it, but it was
Oh, whatever.
yeah, I mean it's pretty bad. It was the end of the 2011 season.
Yeah,
He
that's
hasn't
right.
been the same since.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, him and Utley have both been pretty much injured a lot. So
Yeah.
yeah, there really isn't much going for this team anymore. And I think it's definitely time to hit the reset button.
So we can move on to the offseason grades if you'd like. You want to go first?
Yeah, so my offseason grade, I mean, let's just face it, it was a terrible offseason. They really had nothing to do, and they really didn't do anything. You signed two pitchers, Roberto Hernandez and AJ Burnett. That's pretty much it. So you're getting a D.
Yeah, I mean there's no way this team. It's just it's like okay, so you want to get the most out of this old core that you have, of 34 and 35-year-old guys, and you went 73 and 89 last year. So clearly you got to make a big splash. You got to make some sort of big move if you're gonna get back to a mid to upper 80 win team and try to make a playoff run. And signing AJ Burnett and Roberto Hernandez, I'm sorry to break it to you, Philadelphia, but that's not going to be enough to get you guys back in the playoffs, to get you guys back in the hunt. So at that point, you should be blowing this thing up, and you should have been more proactive in the offseason to try and make trades with guys like Jimmy Rollins, even though he has a no trade clause, or guys like Carlos Ruiz, or I guess he's a free agent. But bad examples, but you guys know what I mean. Or Cliff Lee. I mean, that's a guy that's always thrown into rumors. So I gave them an F. I mean, it was pretty much one of the worst off seasons I can remember. It sounds harsh, but it was really bad, and they're.
I'm really starting to wonder about that Cole Hamels deal that they made 2 years ago, when Texas was offering their farm for Cole Hamels and they said no, and now it's just starting to look like that's going to be a really terrible contract. So, the over-under for this team is at 75, so I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I got them going under. This is pretty much a no-brainer. They won 73 games last year, but if you look at their Pythagorean win-loss, which is basically looking at run differential and spreading out the average run differential per game over 162 games, their Pythagorean win-loss was actually 66 and 96. That's a whole 7 games worse. And it's that's not to say that that's what they should have been last year, but it's just looking at run differential, which is a different way to look at win loss. And the fact that they were that much worse, it reaffirms the fact that they're not going to be any better this year. All those guys are just going to be 1 year older. 1 year older means 1 year more injury prone, so to say. And it's just it's not a good sign, and they're gonna be worse than 75 wins.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking the under of 75. Like you said, 73 and 89 last year. There's a lot of questions with this team. Obviously, they have the new manager this year. Jimmy Rollins has been unhappy all of spring training, and I think the injury bug can definitely bite those two older veterans on the right side of the infield. And I mean, I would hope that they would start exploring trades and try to blow this team up and get a look at some of their younger guys this year. But I'm definitely taking the under this team. It's going to be a pretty terrible year from Philadelphia.
And two more things before we move on. Got to reaffirm my man crush on Darren Ruff, who should be playing full-time this year, but he's not gonna, because of course not. 806 OPS last year. Come on, Philadelphia. Also, Ben Revere, no career home runs in 4 seasons now, basically 3 seasons. Do you think he gets it this year? Do you think he gets his first career Major League home run? I just have to bring it up. It's such a random question, but...
would you count it inside the park home run?
I mean, he plays in Philadelphia. He's got to slap one of those over the 320-foot fence and right.
I'll say yes.
Yeah, over under half of a home run for Ben Revere this year. I'm going over. He's getting it. But do you want to move on to the next team?
Yeah, let's go over to the Mets, who actually had a really nice offseason, I think. New York Mets, 74 and 88, good for third in the NL East last season. Signed Curtis Granderson. That was a very surprising move by them. 4 years, $60 million with a no-trade clause. Obviously, Curtis Granderson for his career always bats terribly, and he only had 7 home runs last year. He was very injured, but let's see, in 2 years, over 2011, 2012, he had an MLB best, 84 home runs. So obviously he's got a lot of power when he's healthy, and I think he's going to be healthy this season. They signed Bartolo Colon, which is also very surprising. 2 years, $20 million, and he's 40 years old. And he's just still very good. 2.65 ERA last year, and he's a master of control now. He doesn't have much velocity, but I remember, I think it was last year, 2 seasons ago, he threw like 42 straight strikes, something like that in one game, and that was just ridiculous. And they also signed John Lannon to compete for the fifth starter spot. I haven't really seen an update on that, but I don't know if you can give me some insight. But so, I mean, this is a really interesting offseason for this team. I mean, they went out and made some big signings, really committed some decent money to Granderson, and only a 2-year deal for Cologne for $10 million, and I think he'll definitely be living up to that contract this season. This is kind of an interesting team if you think about it. What do you think about them?
This is a team that a lot of people have pegged as a breakout team this year. They've had one of the better farm systems in baseball the last couple of years. A lot of people are thinking those guys are going to come up this year. Guys like Travis d'Arnaud, Noah Syndergaard can make a late appearance. They're going to get a full year of Zach Wheeler. Guys like that, people are pegging to come up this year and be productive for a team like this. And I can definitely see that with this team, and I like the youth movement moving forward. But I don't think this is the year, and it's the classic team of a big city team, a team in New York with players that are going to be overrated by people just because it's what you get in big cities like LA and like New York and stuff like that. And I think that if I'm a Mets fan, I'm not looking to this year more so than I'm looking to 2015, 2016 as years that this team is going to come up. I think people are just discounting the fact that Matt Harvey's is he having Tommy John or not? I mean, I've heard conflicting reports.
He had Tommy John.
Okay.
Because I remember when he first was diagnosed with the tear, he was like, "I'm going to try to rehab this." I was like, "What are you doing?" And then he finally did elect to have surgery. He's going to remain out for this season, obviously.
Okay, that's what I assume.
He's very unhappy with the way they've been treating his rehab, though. They're going really cautious, and he hates it. So.
I can't blame him. I think people are just kind of discounting that. He was a 5-win player last year at a 5.2 wins above replacement. Obviously, life doesn't work in a linear fashion like this, but you take him away, you take 5 wins away from a 74-win ball club, and you're down to a 69-win ball club, and I don't see how that's going to be made up for by guys like Zach Wheeler coming up. I'm sure Wheeler will be productive. Cologne is going to be an upgrade over whoever else they had last year. I mean, I don't think Cologne's going to have a sub-3 ERA like he did last year, but he's still a master of control at this point. I remember him just torching the Red Sox at one point last year, going inside outside with that 4-seam 2-seam combo. I mean, it's something special to watch, but they're also not going to have Marlon Byrd this year. He's gone. He was really productive for them last year, 21 homers in 117 games before he was dealt to Pittsburgh. They're also going to I'm sorry, that's the other point. But I think it's a year. I think they're still a year away from making kind of a breakout run. But I do like their farm system. I do like the direction that they're heading in. I didn't love the Curtis Granderson signing. He's a declining guy. You can look at the home away splits to disprove the fact that the theory that a lot of his home runs came because he played in Yankee Stadium. He's still a good power guy, but the Citi Field is not the hitter's park the Yankee Stadium is, so he's going to suffer for that. He struggled last year, obviously due to the injury, but the year before that he had only like a 311 OBP or something like that. I didn't love giving a guy like that $60 million. I'm sure he can be somewhat productive again, but I don't think he's going to live up to that contract. Like I said, I liked the Cologne signing, though, and I do like signing John Lannon. I think he can be a good 4th or 5th starter for a team. But yeah, I think it's a year too early for this team for people to be thinking they're going to win 85 to 88 games to compete for a wild card spot. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that Granderson signing is really going to become an issue, possibly if he doesn't live up to it. Obviously, if he's hitting less than like 25 home runs a season, I mean $15 million a year, that might not be really worth it anymore. But this team did need some power, and he's definitely going to bring that. I think that's a no-brainer. But it is interesting, 4 years, $60 million, but he also has a no-trade clause. So when they do try to dump that contract, and I don't know if they're trying to deal him to like the Astros or something, obviously he's probably going to veto that trade, and they're not going to be able to get rid of that contract. So that could be kind of interesting. Right. Also, another note, Travis d'Arnaud, who they got from that Blue Jays trade for R.A. Dickey. I was looking at some scouts' notes about him this spring, and they say that this kid is probably going to be a bust. They said his catching has looked terrible. His batting has been atrocious. So unless he can fix that, it's really going to become an issue for them because, I mean, that was like their future, their catching spot. And that's kind of in jeopardy right now. And another note about some of their prospects, Noah Syndergaard, who they also got from the Blue Jays, he has looked amazing this spring. A couple scouts called him the best young pitcher in all of spring training this year. So the Mets, they do have an interesting future. I think they definitely have some good pieces. They have some decent prospects actually in their farm system. And you can potentially be looking at a rotation next year of Matt Harvey, Wheeler, Cologne. I don't know how Cologne will be doing by then. He'll be 42 he'll be 42 next season. So, I mean, this rotation could be good with Harvey, Wheeler, Cologne, and possibly Noah Syndergaard, depending on when he comes up. I know that kid's pretty young, but I mean, like you said, not this year, but maybe next year, maybe 2 years from now, they'll definitely be in the playoffs. When they originally signed Cologne, I was thinking this team could potentially be a sleeper pick this year, but I'm starting to not think that anymore. But
Also, I don't know where they're going to play either Lucas Duda or Ike Davis. Those guys are competing for the first base job right now, and signing. I mean, neither of those guys had overwhelming years last year. Duda was okay. He had a 352 OBP, which is not bad, but Ike Davis was a pretty big flop last year. And I think both those guys have played in spurts in right field before. I know Granderson, I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but I'm pretty sure their outfield is going to be Eric Young Jr., Juan Lagares, and Curtis Granderson. And the Granderson thing does block either Duda or Davis. Both those guys are having fantastic springs. Although Davis, and much like he's only had like 12 at bats, but it's looked good nonetheless. And it's I guess no, it's more than 12. His stats aren't updated. Never mind. It's guys that have had good springs, and I think that although I wouldn't have planned on either of those guys really being very good players in 2014, it's something that does make the Granderson signing look a little bit worse now than it did 3 months ago. But anyway, do you want to move on to the offseason grades?
Really quickly, Travis d'Arnaud in 36 at-bats this spring is hitting 139.
So. Not good. All right, I'll go first on my offseason grade. I gave them a B-. I like the Cologne signing, but I wasn't a big fan of the Granderson signing. Other than that, they didn't really do much. It's New York, and if that team does start to get good, that's a weird way of saying it, but if that team does start to progress in the coming years, they are going to be able to attract big-name free agents. So, that's a plus, and I think they were smart to not rush on that front, signing a big-name guy, kind of waiting for the right moment to strike in that sense. But it wasn't a great offseason, I don't think, so I gave them a B-. But, Ryan, what do you think?
My offseason grade for the New York Mets, I gave them a B+. I really like being aggressive and getting Cologne and Granderson. I think that this team it definitely has potential to maybe challenge for a wild-card spot if everything falls into place this year somehow. I mean, it's definitely possible having Granderson if he has a big year, if Cologne really helps with the rotation. Obviously, they're going to be missing Harvey this season, so that's really going to kind of affect that. But I think that getting those guys is really interesting. It was really good offseason move by them, and B+ for them. So.
All right, we'll go on to the over-under. The over-under this team is 74.5. They won 74 last year. And I'll go first here. I'm going with the over. I think this team is young enough and added enough talent in Granderson and Cologne, even though they're going to not have Harvey this year. I still think that they can get, I think they'll be more than a half win better than they were last year. There's just, there's enough talent in this team, and they have enough young guys who can progress a little bit more to make me think that they'll win more than 74 games this year. But what do you think?
Yeah, I'm taking the over on this. I think that it's only at 74 because obviously they don't have Harvey. I think if he was here that this would be more closer to about 80. I think getting Cologne and Granderson is really going to be really beneficial to this team this year, assuming that those guys can continue to have good seasons. If Granderson can get back on track and stay away from those injuries. So I'm taking the over on that. All
right. So, Ryan, do you want to – I guess I'm up now. I'll talk about the Washington Nationals, the second-place team in the NL East last year. We got up to a bad start, but got hot at the end and almost made a playoff run, or almost made a wild card run at the end. They went 86 and 76 last year. The Washington Nationals did good for second in the NL East. They had a pretty big offseason. It wasn't one filled with moves, but it was a couple really good moves, I thought. They got Doug Fister for 25 cents on the dollar. They traded Steve Lombardozzi, Robbie Ray, and Ian Kroll for a guy who Fister doesn't overwhelm you with his general stats. He had a 3.67 ERA last year and 208 2/3 innings. But I believe he had a top 10 FIP last year, which is fielder independent pitching, which is just basically a different form of ERA. It translates it over to if you had a league average defense. And he was like top 10 in that category. He also has been like a top 12 wins above replacement pitcher since 2011, I think. I heard that said at some point over the offseason. So he's a guy that I think is a little bit undervalued by the general sports community or the general baseball community, and they got him for Lombardozzi is a utility player and two okay prospects in Robbie Ray and Ian Kroll. I mean that was one of the biggest steals of the offseason, I think. And I think he's also like 2 or 3 years away from free agency, or maybe 2 years, I think. I don't know off the top of my head. But they also got Jerry Blevins, a 30-year-old left-hander. I believe he's left-handed. I can't remember off the top. I'm pretty sure he's left-handed. Yeah, okay. I didn't want to say that without knowing for a fact. But a 2.80 ERA last year, and 2.80 ERA over the last 2 seasons. He's been pretty durable, going 125 and a third innings over 2 seasons for a reliever. That's pretty good. They also got Nate McLouth. He's going to be a 4th outfielder for them this year. And they also got Jose Lobaton, a guy that I actually I liked them picking him up. I like Lobaton. I thought he was good for the Rays last season. And I witnessed it a little bit firsthand. I was following the Rays very closely last season as the AL East race heated up, and I liked Lobaton. I guess the Rays got Hannigan, and they'll go with him and Molina again this year. But I liked Lobaton. He's a good backup, and I think him and Wilson Ramos will be good back there for the Nationals this year. But what do you think of this team? Do you think the Nationals can bounce back and get back to the playoffs in 2014, Ryan?
Oh, hell yes, they can. I mean, I don't think there's any question. This team has a lot of star power in it. Anthony Rendon, I think he won this second baseman job for one, or finally. He should have had that last year. They had no production from second base, and that kid is just going to be another stud from that farm system who just has they used to have a ton of prospects. Now they're all up in the major leagues. So let's take a look at this team. So they're starting pitching, obviously one of the best rotations in the league. You have Strasburg, Gio Gonzalez, Jordan Zimmerman, and you got Doug Fister, who's just a complete workhorse. And like you said, all of his sabermetric stats are just off the charts of that guy. And then number 5 is Rourke. So that's a very, very good rotation, probably like top 3 in the league, I would probably say. Bullpen is excellent. You got Rafael Soriano, Clippard, Storen, Stamen, all these guys, Jerry Blevins as well. They have so much pitching on this team, it's ridiculous. This outfield, Harper, Span, Worth. Worth needs to get back on track. I think how did he do last season?
He did pretty well. He had a really good year. He had where's his stats? He had 318, 398, 532, 931 OPS. Guy that I said last year in the podcast was going to bounce back. Just plugging myself there, but go ahead.
All right. So yeah, that's just a really good outfield, like you said. Bryce Harper was your MVP candidate last year, wasn't he?
Yes, I like to ignore that.
Well, I mean, he was on track until he got injured, but
yeah, he did have a very, very good early part of the season, but he obviously got banged up.
Yes, I mean, this is such a nice outfield that they got. And then also their infield, really nice. Ian Desmond had a really nice year last year. Ryan Zimmerman, I think he's going to get back on track this year. And then you have LaRoche over there at first, who likes to strike out a lot. But so this team is just overall a very good team. I would put this at like a 90 overall team, definitely. And it's just basically a two-team race in this division between them and the Braves. And all the Nationals, I think, really have to do is get better than the Braves. This pitching staff from the Nationals last year, they had the fewest walks per 9 in the league at 2.52. Of course, who's in second place? The Braves, 2.54. So this is just, I mean, it's just like a 2-team battle between these teams. It's who's gonna be better than the other one. So basically, if you talk about the Nationals, you have to talk about the Braves as well, because they're both so similar. It seems like they have so many different pieces in their rotation, in their lineup. So I just think this team is a really good team, and as long as they can get off to a really nice start, I think that if they start out cold this year for the first month and a half, then it can definitely lead them into danger and missing the playoffs again. They need to start off this April pretty hot. They need to get into first place, and hopefully they can keep going from there. What do you think about this rotation of them, real quickly?
Yeah, this rotation is stacked. Obviously, they pretty much plug Fister in over Dan Herron, who they lost to the Dodgers. But Herron, although had a good second half last year, overall was not that impressive. He had a 4.67 ERA, went 10-14. But you add Doug Fister to a rotation with Steven Strasburg, who struggled a little bit last year, but I would not worry about him. Zimmerman, who had his best year of his career last year, and Gio Gonzalez, who's only 2 years removed now from a Cy Young type season. So it's a stacked rotation. It's, like you said, probably one of the best in baseball. And Tanner Rourke looked pretty good last year. He made 5 starts, pitched 14 total games, and ended up with a 1.51 ERA and 53 and 2/3 innings. If you can give them any type of production out of that 5th spot, I think the rotation it definitely could be one of the best in baseball. Their lineup, I think about them, I think it's going to be about staying healthy, especially their big guys like Jason Worth, Bryce Harper, Zimmerman, Desmond. I think those guys got to stay healthy this year. I don't see a ton of production on their bench. I like Espinosa as a backup guy, but I think it's just a team that is going to have to get a little bit lucky with injuries, but I guess you can say that about every team. Obviously, no team's bench player is going to be better than their starters, so you can make that argument. But it's a team that I definitely think is going to bounce back last year. For a disappointing team, they still won 86 games last year, and we're right in the playoff race till the end. They're over on. Oh, I guess we'll talk about that later. But yeah, I like this team, and I like their offseason. Fisher was a steal, and yeah, that's that. So do you want to move on to the offseason grades? You can go first.
Yeah. My offseason grade, I gave them a B+. They really didn't do much, like we said. But I think getting Doug Fister was just so crucial for this team. I think he's really going to solidify that rotation. If any of those guys above him gets injured and goes down with an injury, he's just going to move up one spot, be the number 3 starter, and that's still a very excellent spot for Doug Fister on this team. I think really that's really what they needed is Doug Fister on this team. They really gave him nothing for him, so B+ for them.
Yeah, I went with a B. They didn't make a ton of moves, but I didn't think they had to. I love the Fisker thing. It's obviously, it could turn out. I guess we're not going to know what the trade will end up until 5 years from now. But as of now, it looks like the Nationals just absolutely robbed the Tigers on that trade. McLeod is a good depth option in the outfield, and Blevins will be another left-handed arm, which I think the Nationals needed last year. Their better arms like Soriano, Storin, and Clippard are all righties. So I think adding another lefty in that pen, that is going to be a plus. And Craig Stammen too. So they needed a lefty. They got a lefty. That was good. That was a good idea to get Blevins. And other than that, they didn't make a ton of moves, but they made smart moves. They made good moves, and I gave them a B. So the over/under on this team is a 90. They went 86 and 76 last year. I think this is a team that underperformed last year, and like I said, they had a good offseason. I like their moves, so I think they're going to get better. And I think you add that to the fact that they did underperform last year. This should be an easy over. Obviously I don't know how the season's going to play out, but you just project this team. It's easy to see this team winning much more than 90 games.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking the over on that one as well, unless some type of injury happens, or if for some reason Strasburg and Gio have ERAs above 6. Which probably won't happen. There's no reason that this team isn't going to get over 90 wins. I think last year they just started out really, really slow, and it really helped. They really negatively affected them last year. I don't think they got over 500 until August. It took them a while to get over 500, but once they did, they got really hot at the end of the season. Almost made the playoffs. They missed it by a couple games. So I think this team's really good this year. Obviously battling with the Braves for the number 1 spot in this division.
All right.
So let's go to the Atlanta Braves. 96 and 66 last year, which is first in the NL East. They didn't really make many moves this offseason, but they just extended a ton of people, which is really cool. Really smart by them. So the biggest one was recently signing Andrelton Simmons to a 7-year extension. I don't have the money.
I think it was somewhere around $50 million.
Yeah, that sounds about right. They did lose Brian McCann, however, I thought it said they do hate Evan Gattis. I was like, what the? No, but they have Evan Gattis too. They just love that kid. Signed Gavin Floyd for 1 year, $4 million with $4.5 million incentives. I don't know how he's doing. Or no, never mind. He's not even pitching yet. He's supposed to be returning in May, so we'll see what he can do. Obviously, this rotation might need a little bit of help this year, which we'll get to that in a second. They traded for Ryan Dowman, who's going to be their backup catcher this year. I really like that deal.
Yeah, I like Dowman.
Lost Tim Hudson. He had that gruesome injury last year that we talked about a couple episodes ago. I lost him to the Giants. Signed Freddie Garcia for 1 year, who could possibly be getting that number 5 starting job in the spring. Signed Jason Hayward to a 2-year deal. Extended Freddie Freeman for a massive 8-year, $135 million contract, which really actually was a really club-friendly deal. That's not really that well. That is a lot of money, but I think Freddie Freeman is way over that.
That AAV is, I don't know, 16, 17. So yeah. That's good signing for if he's going to be an MVP candidate every year.
Also, they signed Craig Kimbrell for 4 years, $42 million with the 5th-year option for $13 million, which I would assume they're going to end up taking that option. and extended Julio Teheran for 6 years, $32 million. I think he's also their opening day starter that was announced today.
Hmm.
And just a week ago, they signed Irvin Santana for 1 year, $14 million. Obviously, the big story about this team was losing Chris Medlin to Tommy John surgery, and also Brandon Beachy. But I really don't understand why people made that such a big deal, because they're acting like this rotation is gonna miss Beachy. But Beachy wasn't even in the rotation all of last year. He had Tommy John surgery last year, and he really wasn't even a part of this rotation. So they already know how to perform without him, and I don't think it's going to be a big deal losing Beachy for this entire year. And I think a lot of people are agreeing with that. They're saying that this rotation is going to be absolutely fine. Well, obviously losing Chris Medlin is kind of big, but they went out and got Urban Santana, and just this team is just they have so many good guys that can perform. What do you think about this team?
I would have to agree on the Beachy thing. He actually did make 5 starts for them last year, but he only had a 4.50 ERA. Was not that he threw 30 innings for them. I mean, your point is right. They know how to pitch without him. They won. I can't even remember, 95 games, I believe, something like that last year. 96 games, basically without him last year. So they're not going to miss him more than they did last year, I would say. Medlin going down was big, but they do have some good young arms to step up. I look to Alex Wood this year to continue his success. Obviously, Tehran was great last year for them and probably deserves to be that number 1 starter coming into this year. And what was I going to say? I can't remember already. Jesus. And the Irvin Santana signing. Guy that's been up and down for a lot of his career, coming off a very good year with the Royals. And he's going to be on another 1-year contract, so it's a contract. I always like the guys in contract years. I think that's going to be big. I think he's going to want to go out there and earn that $100 million that he thought he was worth early in the offseason. He's also a durable guy. He's made over 30 starts in each of his last 4 seasons, so at the very least, they're getting a guy who's going to eat up some innings for them. And a 1-year contract, you don't have to worry about the value so much, or the amount so much with a guy like that. But I did like I did like them extending a lot of their guys. They're homegrown guys. I think it's something, yeah, and I think it says something to the players in the organization when a guy comes up like that, like a Freddie Freeman, like a Andrelton Simmons, or like a Craig Kimbrell, guys who come up through their system like that, and then they get rewarded for working hard and being patient, and then coming up and performing when they do. I think that says something to your organization. So I think that's good. I like, obviously some of those contracts could become bargains in a couple years, and I think that's what the Braves are looking for. So, I liked that. I don't think they had to do a whole lot in terms of adding more pieces. I mean, you look at positions where they could improve, like second base or center field. You got guys on big contracts like there. You're not going to bring in other guys on big contracts and just have, $20 million at a position to, pay for an $8 million player or whatever. You just don't do that. That's bad business. So I didn't mind them not, making any upgrades there. And other than that, they don't have too many holes. I think Chris Johnson will come back down a little bit this year. He hit 321 last year. I don't think that's going to sustain. He had a high BABIP, so I imagine that will come down a little bit. And I think the place where people are going to point to them or their weakness this year is going to be that rotation, missing Medlin. But I think with guys like Mike Minor, Julio Teheran, Ervin Santana, Alex Wood, I think they're going to be fine there. I've talked about this before. Baseball's a sport where you can always make upgrades in the middle of the year. It's not a sport like the NFL where it's hard to find a guy, halfway through the season to help improve your roster. I wouldn't be worried about that. So I think that's a room where they can improve. And I think their bullpen's going to be fine. Obviously, Kimbrell locked down. They got a good 65 and 2/3 innings out of David Carpenter last year. Walden was okay for them. I think he was better at the first half of the year, but Luis Avilan, I don't know how to pronounce it, he was pretty good. So I think their bullpen's going to be fine. And other than that, there's not a lot much to gripe out with this team. It's a team that won 96 games last year, and is probably going to do something very similar this year. The only thing I don't like about this team is their manager. I don't like Freddie Gonzalez too much.
I agree with that, actually.
I think I can't remember, but I think they gave him an extension. Yeah, I didn't like that. And, I don't follow the Braves close enough to be able to point out certain maybe like in-game decisions that he made, but I just think you have a team that, collapsed 2 years ago and ended up missing out on the wild card spot. In 2012, they unrattled in that wild card game. They were, heavily favored over that Cardinals team and should have beaten them. But they just unraveled with that infield fly stuff, and In 2013, they had a disappointing first round exit to the Dodgers, who, in hindsight, the Dodgers are a very good team, and obviously you can't, in a vacuum, you can't in a vacuum be upset over a playoff loss to a team like that. But I just look at guys like that. I look at teams that have done that or have had that kind of reputation over the last couple of years, and I point right to the manager. And Gonzalez is a guy with not a big track record. He took over after Bobby Cox ended up retiring, and he hasn't done a lot since in terms of playoff victories or anything like that. So he's not a guy that I like, and you can't. I mean, it's hard to fire a manager after he's gone to the playoffs 2 straight years and won 96 games last year. So I don't know if firing him would have been the right move, but it's the one thing I point to this team, and I think that's their weakness. I think it's with the manager. But do you have any other thoughts on them?
Yeah, just a couple quick notes. Obviously, this team has a lot of power and a lot of strikeouts. They led the NL in homers last year, 181. And really the only production that they're going to be losing is Brian McCann's 20 home runs this season, who signed with the Yankees. Also, I didn't know this. I knew that Dan Uggla had a bad season last year, but I didn't know this, that he hit 179. And also B.J. Upton hitting 184. I knew that both those guys had bad. I didn't know that they hit under 200. So I think that if both those guys can hit over 200, this club would definitely take that. So, and then like is usually with this club, they do have a huge concern with those strikeouts. They strike out 22.6% of the time. Obviously, that's first, and they do walk 8.8% of the time, which is also second in the National League. So they strike out a lot, but they also walk a lot. So that's kind of interesting. Kind of a little bit kind of balances each other out. And then finally is this pitching staff, as I was talking about last year. They don't have a bunch of stars in them. They don't have the Strasburg and Gio and Jordan Zimmerman and all these guys, but their collective staff led the league in ERA at a whopping 3.18. So I honestly think that they're probably going to continue that this year. Maybe drop a little bit, but they'll probably be around like 3.4-ish. I think that'd be kind of reasonable. I just think that this team has such good pitching on this team, and they just need to avoid some more injuries. Like if they were to lose Julio Teheran this season, I mean that would just be devastating for this team. But I really don't see many roadblocks for them.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is an injury to their pitching staff. I think might affect them, and I'm sure that'll happen at some point. I think it's going to be the response that will. I think that's going to be big. Whenever if someone goes down, what they do at that point. But nonetheless, we can get into their offseason grades if you'd like. I'll go first. I gave them an A-. I love locking up a lot of their core guys to long-term contracts. Obviously, whenever you give anyone a 7-year deal, there's risk there. There's a risk there, but I think they give him to the right guy. Simmons, has he has a set skill that he's good at, and if he's good defensively for the rest of his career and hits 250, he's going to be, a very, very good player because he is bar none probably the best defensive player in baseball. Mm-hmm. Freddie Freeman MVP candidate, Kimbrel, arguably probably the best closer with Mariano gone. Yeah, with Mariano, that's no doubt now. Best closer in baseball. Teheran was great for them last year. Teheran, however you say that. And I didn't mind them losing Brian McCann. I like Evan Gattis. I think he's a good glue guy for a little bit. I think he can. I can't remember what the term they use for those guys, but I think a bridge guy. I think he's going to be a bit of a bridge guy to Christian Bethancourt. Who I think they really like. He's really good defensively. He's only 22 years old now. Yeah, he's 23 now. So I think he's a guy that they might look to in the future. He's hitting a whopping 167 this spring training, I believe. But he's young. He's only 22. Catchers develop slower than other players, so I'm not worried about him. But so I liked them not re-signing McCann. So I give them an A-.
I gave them an A- as well. Like you said. I really like them bringing in the rest of their future for a while. They got their core guys. They got their starter. They got the best closer in baseball. They have defense, and then they have Friendly Freeman, who just hits a crap load. And I just like their depth signings. I mean, they got Dalmit. What else did they sign? They got Gavin Floyd. You have Freddie Garcia. So I mean, they just got more depth on this team. They can definitely withstand a few injuries. So, I mean, it was a pretty good offseason for this team. They made a ton of moves. Even though they didn't sign people, they just extended a crap load of people, and I loved it.
All right, and we'll move on to the over-under. This team has an over-under at 87, which would be a 9-win, loss or whatever. It'd be 9 less wins than they had last year. They won 96 games last year. I guess it's the pitching injuries.
Yeah, the injuries.
I guess it's got to be that because I don't see how this team's going to be that much worse. I mean, Gaddis is definitely a worse player than McCann, but I don't think he's worth 9 wins less than McCann. I guess the two big things you look at this team are losing McCann and losing Medlin, but I think they have enough depth. I think they have the right organization to be able to withstand those and not win under 87 games. So I'm going over on this team. 87 is way too low. It's a way too low team. It's way too low of a number for this team in this pretty top heavy and bottom crappy division. So I'm going over.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking the over, like you said. I think that's only like that low because of those injuries, but it almost seems like they forgot that they signed Irvin Santana. I mean, I would think that would kind of sort of balance out losing Medlin. Maybe not as much, but I mean, maybe like just 2 wins. But I mean, if this team loses or wins less than 90 games this year, I'd be really surprised by that. But yeah, this team's going to be competing for this division race, no doubt. They're going to have no problem with losing Medlin and Beachy this year, and they're going to be fine. Definitely taking that over.
All right, so that's pretty much going to do it for the NL East. We'll move on to the AL tomorrow, which will be this is going up on Wednesday, so tomorrow will be Thursday. We'll move on to the NL or the AL West then. Sorry, I'm exhausted, but nonetheless, so that's going to do it. Thanks, Ryan, for joining me as always, and thanks to those who watched. If you have anything to say, go ahead.
Thanks for watching, guys, and we will see you guys for the AL West tomorrow, and should be a good one.
Oh yeah, big offseason there with the Rangers and stuff. But anyway, so that's going to do it. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you did enjoy, and as always, we're out. Peace.
See you guys later.